Back at E3 2016, the world, including myself, saw a new teaser of a new Spider-Man game developed by Insomniac, the same team that made the likes of Ratchet & Clank and many other great games. Me and many others were skeptical at this because this was a new Spider-Man game made by a new developer, and no one knew how a game like this would turn out, to be honest. But as we now know, Marvel's Spider-Man became a staple of the gaming generation. I bring this up because me and a lot of others thought Insomniac Spider-Man was going to be a mediocre open-world Spider-Man game. And at times it can be that, but I think it made New York look gorgeous. The gameplay was fun, sleek and stylish, and it had a spectacular story. So with that being said, let's take a deep dive into Marvel's Spider-Man. Let's start by talking about the graphics, animations, and the city that never sleeps, aka New York City.
Oops, guess we're stuck in here for a while. Want to play 20 questions?
Marvel's Spider-Man's New York City looks beautiful, just like its real-life counterpart, with incredible detail left and right. Other environments here look great, like the rooftop of buildings, cars, and street signs. You can also change the weather at the end of the campaign, so you can make the city look gorgeous with a bright sun as the weather, or have a moody take on New York City with rainy weather. All the interiors look great, from the detail on buildings to the demon warehouses. The open world also looks so alive, and a big part of that is because of the civilians. You can also interact with the civilians, making the game feel more real and alive. There's also photo mode in the game, which is great because it has lots of great options, and this game looks so good that any photo you take in this game looks spectacular. Also, the cutscenes in this game look out of this world. They're bonkers. The cinematography, the lighting, and the incredible voice acting make all of these cutscenes spectacular. Spider-Man's web-slinging animations look great, with him doing heroic poses as he traverses through the city, and the animations of Peter swinging are so strict and rigid, because all of his movements are to be as optimal as possible. Peter moves with finesse, but all of his moves are perfectly calculated, and it looks so good, and animations flow together so perfectly, it's astonishing to me. Like, honestly, the amount of polished animations they have for Peter is amazing. You have animations for him walking, wall running, swinging, even climbing up a fire escape. So overall, the animations are great in this game. The loading screens in the game are also great because they consist of poses of Spider-Man doing iconic swinging poses. The camera in the game is good most of the time. I say most of the time because sometimes, mainly in the robbery crimes in the game, the camera will get a terrible angle, making it hard to even play the game. But it's not a deal breaker, it just happens sometimes and really gets me annoyed. There are also lots of skins in Marvel Spider-Man. You can think of basically any suit from the comics and it's in the game. The Classic suit, it's here. The Sam Raimi suit, it's here. Even the MCU suit is here. Even the Amazing Spider-Man suit is here. And not that much people don't like it. It's all here. So, it makes for a great collection of suits to choose from. There's a lot of suits in this game, so there's lots of variety for people to choose from, which I think is awesome. The suits here are also showing cutscenes, showing how much effort Insomniac put into the suits in this game. There are also a lot of suit powers, which you get from the suits. The first suit power you get is the Battle Focus power. The Battle Focus suit power is a suit power where your focus bar goes skyrocket for a short period of time. There's lots of great gadgets like the Battle Focus I just mentioned, and the Web Blossom, which is really good. You also have lots of useless suit powers, like the low gravity power and the blur projector. There's lots of suit powers in the game, so there's definitely one for everyone. There's also suit mods, which act as kind of buffs more than anything, and can make a real difference in battle. The soundtrack in this game is spectacular, especially when you're swinging around. Insomniac's team somehow created a soundtrack that not only hits, but represents Peter as a character. Peter is a heroic but calm-headed guy, for the most part, and the music represents this so well with incredible triumphant themes. So overall, the presentation is mostly great. But now, let's take a deep dive into the gameplay. There's mainly two types of gameplay in Spider-Man: combat and stealth. The combat sees you throwing flurries of punches and kicks at your opponents. You also have the finisher moves, which sees you plummeting your opponent, but it costs a bar of your focus meter, which is a meter that you can use to heal yourself. You also have your basic attack with square and your dodge attack with circle. And if you press triangle, you'll see yourself performing a web strike, which sees you go face first into an enemy. There's also lots of combos you can do with combat, like air combos and ground combos. You can also throw stuff around you and throw them at other people. You can throw stuff, like debris, for example, which will stun opponents for a little amount of time. You can also upgrade your combos, which you'll need to, because as the game goes on, stronger and stronger enemies will start to pop up, and by the end of the game, it's pretty hard, I can't lie. At the start of the game, you'll fight your basic thugs, but by the end of the game, you'll be fighting inner demons, big boys, and Sable enemies. We also have gadgets to help us in battle. The gadgets we have to our disposal are like, for example, web shooters, which rapidly fires webs and shoot enemies that are right in front of you, and they're a good beginner gadget. But then you quickly get the impact web, which is a web blast that will instantly web up any enemy that it hits. It's also pretty good. You also have the spider drone, which shoots webs at enemies and defends Spider-Man in battle. You then have the electric web, which is an electrified web that stuns enemies. It's okay in battle. The next one is the web bomb, which fires a bomb that hovers in the air before blasting enemies nearby. It's a pretty good gadget. Then you have the concussion blast, which discharges a pulse of sonic waves that sends enemies scattering away. You also have the suspension matrix, which sends enemies into the air and keeps them there for a bit. And the final gadget is the trip mine, which is a laser activated device that disables an enemy that comes across it. The gadgets here are good, and the only criticism I have with the gadgets is that they're simply too OP. You have 8 gadgets that can be leveled up, making gameplay easy if you really do choose it. Apart from that, the gadgets are good though, they're just really OP, and I think Insomniac needs to tone it down in the sequel. Enemies will always be shooting at you, so you'll always be on the move. In combat sequences, the cool thing about combat is that you can do any combat situation in many different ways. You can use the environment to get some kills, you can fight and get into a straight up brawl, or you can stealthily pick up enemies one by one. The stealth in this game is okay. You have the Purge takedown, which sees you webbing up an enemy stealthily. You have the Web Straight takedown, which sees you striking your opponent quickly. And you also have the Vent takedown, which sees you webbing an enemy in a vent. The takedown animations are good here, and the stealth here overall is good, which is a relief because stealth is one of my favorite parts in video games like this. There are also chase sequences in some of the parts in the story, and they're very fun, to be honest. It's very fun chasing a bad guy throughout the city. But now let's take a deep dive into the boss fights. The boss fights in this game can be fun as hell or pretty trash. Like for example the Fist boss fight. It's a great beginner boss fight showing you the ropes of the game. But then you have boss fights like Mr. Negative, and it's pretty bad. This boss fight only has one solution, which can be set for most of the bosses in this game. You can't fight the bosses in different ways like you can in combat and stealth. And that one solution most of the time is to swing and dodge their attacks until their guard is down, and then you have to hit them and then rinse and repeat. But I gotta talk about the elephant in the room, which are the MJ and Miles portions of the game. Basically, sometimes you'll switch to Mary Jane or Miles Morales' perspective for whatever reason, and you have to do a gameplay segment with them. The problem with them is that their gameplay straight up sucks. They're boring as hell. Like for example, let's look at MJ's gameplay. It just sees you sneaking around enemies, and it doesn't help that the AI is straight up bad. And the Miles Morales' gameplay isn't as bad as Mary Jane's, and it's a lot shorter, which is good, but overall their gameplay isn't great, and it slows the pace of the game down considerably. There's also puzzles in certain points of the game. Some of them are good, like the Yin Yang portrait puzzle and the statue puzzle. There's also bad ones like the science puzzles in Doc Ock's lab. These puzzles are boring and ruin the pace of the story and gameplay. There's also side quests in this game, like the radio towers, where when activated will show you lots of landmarks and missions around the area, and there are a ton littered around New York City. There's also landmarks, which sees you taking pictures of iconic places in New York. It's a cool but very quick side quest. You also have backpacks, which you can find scattered around New York City, which have trinkets of Spider-Man's past and offer great lore of the Spider-Man universe. I personally love this side quest overall. You also have the Black Cat side mission, where you take photos of her clues she leaves you, and at the end you find her hideout and you get a snazzy new suit for you. You also have challenges from Taskmaster, where you can do combat challenges, stealth challenges, race challenges, and even a time trial to get all the bombs and much more. This was a cool side quest. There are also bases that are littered with Sable agents, inner demons, or Fisk employees in it. You can either take them down by stealth or combat. These side missions are good, but the best side quest in my opinion is the Tombstone side quest, which has a great boss fight. These side quests I talked about are just a little of how much great side quests are in the game. Overall, the side quests are mostly good, and overall playing as Spider-Man is enjoyable and fun for the most part.
But now I have to destroy it.
The story starts off in Peter's apartment as he jumps out of his window to go to the Fisk raid. We go to the Fisk raid and we meet Spider-Man's friend Yuri Watanabe, who is the captain of the NYPD, and she helps us out throughout the game. At the end of the raid, we take down Wilson Fisk. Then we head to Peter's other job as a lab assistant to Dr. Octavius, which is the final boss at the end of the game, and his downward spiral is executed greatly here. But back to the story, we run into an old enemy called the Shocker, and after chasing him down, we send him to the Raft, which is a super prison. We then get a report of a break-in at the Fisk art exhibit, and while we're investigating, a new enemy gets a drop on us, but we get saved by Mary Jane. We then get a flashback of Mary Jane and how she saved us. After that, we have to fight Shocker again because he escapes from the Raft. He escapes from the help of a security guard with glowing eyes, which we soon find out is one of Martin Lee's minions. Martin Lee is one of the main enemies inside the game, and runs Feast, which is a shelter that Aunt May volunteers at. Martin Lee looks good on the outside, but he lives a double life on his own, where he calls himself Mr. Negative. Mr. Negative has the ability to control and take negative energy, and these powers were supposedly given to him by a failed experiment done by Otto Octavius and Norman Osborn. And that's all I've gathered from Martin Lee and Mr. Negative. So we fight Mr. Negative on multiple occasions and we try to get through to him, but in our final confrontation we get interrupted by Otto Octavius, and Martin Lee kinda just doesn't show up again, and we don't really get a conclusion to his story, which is pretty sad. Either way, after we defeat the Shocker, we investigate an old Fisk warehouse with Officer Jefferson Davis, where we find out that the demons have been seizing a lot of Fisk's weapons for some evil business of their own. And after Jefferson Davis saves us, we hear that he's going to get an award at a rally. The next day at the rally, Jefferson Davis is about to get his award when the inner demons show up and bomb the place, with Jefferson Davis meeting the Crossfire. We then switch to Miles Morales' perspective, who is Jefferson's son, and we move through the destroyed rally to try to find Jefferson, but unfortunately we found out that he's dead. We then attend Jefferson's funeral and talk to Miles as we continue our search for Martin Lee, when we meet Silver Sable and her agents. After that, it's just a hunt for Martin Lee and the Devil's Breath virus, until we intercept a convoy, which leads into a conflict at the Grand Central Station, where we beat Mr. Negative and the Devil's Breath is handed to Sable International. Then there's a breakout at the Raft with lots of enemies escaping, so we go and stop it, but while we're there, we run into the Scorpion, Electro, and Martin Lee, and Rhino as well. And as all of these enemies are beating up Spider-Man, we get the reveal that Otto Octavius is the leader of the Sinister Six. After that, the Devil's Breath virus is released and causes an outbreak, and was caused by Otto as well. So we take down all of the Sinister Six except for Otto, who has the Devil's Breath virus cure, and we go back and make an anti-Ock suit and prepare for the final battle, where we take down Dr. Octavius in a very emotional boss fight. And upon returning back to Feast, Peter sees Aunt May in critical condition from the Devil's Breath virus, and Peter has a choice to give the cure to Aunt May or to the doctor so he can make more cures so he can save a lot of lives. Peter makes the hard decision to let May die to save everyone else, and Miles gets bitten by a radioactive spider as well, setting up the half sequel with Miles Morales. And that's the story. The story here is great. This is a spectacular modern story of Spider-Man and is a love letter to Spider-Man fans. Peter is older, which I love, and he has real problems. Like in the opening cutscene, we see where he can either pay his rent or go after Fisk, and he obviously goes after Fisk because that's just the person he is. But soon after that, he gets evicted from his apartment and he has to go to the dumpster to find his stuff. Every decision matters, and we care about every decision Peter makes. And that's why the story is so good. That's why we care about Peter's small conversations with Yuri or Aunt May. I care about all the interactions because the characters are so good and because every decision matters. For example, like Peter and Doc's friendship, we have cutscenes and game phone calls for us to care about their friendship. So when the final boss fight comes around, you care, and it's brilliant. Yes, the combat is great, their presentation looks amazing, but the story is something else. It's a gem, and it's something that made me care for the characters I didn't care for before playing this game, like Miles Morales or Silver Sable, which is pretty impressive. Also like the little interactions and Easter eggs and backpacks that expand the lore for Spider-Man. Peter does everything right. He takes care of Aunt May, he tries to reason with Martin Lee and help Dr. Octavius, but by the end of the story, Peter loses all of them, and more. but he continues to be optimistic and have hope. He continues to be Spider-Man. You can tell that this game was made by people that honestly love the characters of Spider-Man and the story. And the story is great here with great messages about trust and independence.
Weird, right? Not that weird.
Marvel's Spider-Man was a spectacular and personal adventure about trust, self-growth, and independence. This game is not just the best Spider-Man game yet, but a generation-defined game for the PlayStation, which is a great feat. And it's not perfect. It has lots of issues with like the boss fights being lackluster and the camera work can be wonky sometimes, and the side quests left more to be desired. But that doesn't stop the gameplay mechanics, story, and presentation to be spectacular. So although the game isn't perfect, it's definitely the best Spider-Man game and one of the best games on the PlayStation. And I can't wait to talk about the DLC for this game and its half sequel, Spider-Man Miles Morales. Everyone, thank you all for listening up till now. I've been working my butt out to get this video out, and I hope it was worth it. In my next video, I don't know what it will be. I might do an Uncharted video, I don't know yet. I always want to get the DLCs of this game talked about at some point if you guys are interested in that. Otherwise, I might just move on to Miles Morales, and I'll probably do a Crash Bandicoot video at some point as well. Oh, sorry, I don't really have a big update for you guys, but yeah, thank you all for watching. I appreciate you all. Go check out my other videos if you haven't. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys all next time. Peace.